Hello, welcome, Exiles. Previously, I left you guys with I'm indecisive between doing an Elementalist and doing a Trickster. And I've made my decision. We're doing Trickster. We're going to represent the 0.2% gang. Everybody says Trickster sucks. Everybody says Trickster needs a buff. And although those things are true, which they probably are, we're going to prove them wrong. And we're going to represent the Trickster lifestyle. And I have in front of you right now a Trickster I made previously, which was an Energy Shield Righteous Fire Trickster. I'm not sure if this was the exact setup or gear I had. I think it was. It was stuff that I put in my stash and then I took out of my stash, so I think this is it. It's roughly what the gearing was. The passive tree I think is a little bit jacked up. There were some unallocated points. I went and grabbed some dex nodes just so I could equip the gear and not have to go find some random Astromenace in my stash, yada, yada, yada. Point is, this is just kind of something I can look at and say, okay, the last time I did an Energy Shield Righteous Fire Trickster, this is what I did. And looking at this gear, when I'm scrolling through it, there are, in my opinion, significant improvements I can make on basically every piece of gear here. And I'm pretty excited about it because there's a lot that's changed. The one thing I probably wouldn't be able to necessarily get something better than, I think I maybe can, is this belt. This belt, for example, has a Legacy Energy Shield recovery rate. This now rolls from like 10 to 15% instead of 15 to 20%. So this is technically Legacy, but there might be other affixes I might want on my belt. I might want a Stygian Vise. Moral of the story is, I've gone through these pieces, and now in the current game, with the Eldritch Implicits, with the Coruscating, Trader, low-life tech, I would be changing basically every piece of this gear, as well as changing my pathing on the tree, and I think I can optimize it significantly in comparison to this build. And this build wasn't even bad. This build was able to do 30 Simulacrum relatively consistent, I would say about 50% of the time. It would basically just depend if I got a really painful wave. And by really painful wave, I mean Giga Fire Res plus some other very bad mods for a Righteous Fire character type of thing. But for the most part, this character was a strong character. It did the feared, it was able to do the wave 30 Simulacrum, and I think we can improve on it in fairly significant ways. For example, one thing I'm considering, which I haven't, decided on 100%, but one thing I've considered is Graven's Secret with a combination of the power charge node from Swift Killer. We could potentially go for 5 absorption charges plus frenzy charges. This would be dropping Heartstopper, and the reason we'd be able to do dropping Heartstopper is because of the tech I mentioned in the last video about killing worms to get the damage, killing an enemy with damage over time recently procced in order to proc a bunch of energy shield recharge or regen and proc our recovery rate. Stuff like that will make our sustain so incredibly good. I don't think Heartstopper will be needed at all. And recovery rate, I believe, applies to absorption charges. What absorption charges do is they give you elemental damage taken, recouped his life, recouped his energy shield. And if I had 5 of those charges, 5 times 12, 60% elemental damage recouped his energy shield. You multiply that by our energy shield recovery rate, which will be somewhere in between 50 and like 70-ish, depending on how many pieces of gear I get with recovery rate, which will give us roughly about 90 to 100% elemental damage recouped his energy shield. Stuff like this will make us feel very, very good in terms of tanking elemental damage. Not to mention, there's things like Melding of the Flesh. This character had 83 max fire res, and then it had some bad cold and lightning resistances. I'm thinking we could get this all the way to 90, 90, 90. This character used Shadow Stitch's Garb, which added a lot of minus to our all res to have corrupted gear, and I'm pretty sure we can improve on in this chest piece and get a chest piece that does even more ES for our build with a global defense chest piece. I think is what I'll be searching for my end game piece, most likely type of deal. And that's going to result in us being able to push our energy shield higher, push our evasion higher, and then also, if you're swapping out the minus max or the minus res from Shadow Stitch for minus res from Melding, going for some Bismuth Flask tech, which we're going to be able to fit in, I believe, that'll make our resistances pretty easy to cap out, at which point we're looking at a character that has 90 max all res, 12k plus ES. I'm thinking we'll get somewhere in the range. I think this character had, I want to say, 95% evade chance, which we'll have that again, plus we'll have higher percent or higher evasion. I think this was like maybe a 60k evasion character or something like that, and that will go higher obviously with the global defense mod. And then you consider the fact we have Ghost Shrouds. The defenses on this character are going to feel insane, in my opinion, once we put the gear together. Obviously, we're not going to start out at this crazy energy shield base. We're going to have to work through life-based to get there. And when I say work through life-based, I have basically mapped out some trees and some plans for life-based, specifically for farming gear. And I'll walk you guys through that. So to start off with, I have trees all the way from level 11, and scrolling through them, I probably should scroll this out before I do this so you guys can just see it as I go through them. Scrolling through them, we're going all the way up to a level 91 character. Initially, the way I plan this out is I'm not really prioritizing jewel sockets to begin with, because early on, you're not going to be able to find 3-stat jewel socket, 3-stat jewel, 3-stat jewel, which I think is kind of the threshold for where I think it's worth prioritizing the jewel socket or the jewel sockets. And so initially, this is like, okay, we're just running through with super budget gear. This is the tree we're going with. Eventually, once we get a little bit of chaos here and there, and we start buying a 5C, 10C, rare jewels with 3 stats, eventually we start converting the tree into something like this, which is going to have more life and more damage. And this is around a level 95-ish character. I think this character right here, it's going to be, I want to say somewhere in the range of 5 to 10x on the high end of when we've got this better invested life gear, where we've kind of had a pretty solid setup going. And then we're going to be farming with this character our energy shield gear. I am planning to give you guys basically daily updates on my character progression, as well as, okay, once I get to this point where I say the life character is good enough, I can take down the end game content fairly comfortably, and we're farming currency. I'll be talking about the energy shield gear we're prioritizing, basically creating and making as we're assembling and stuff like that. Previously, when I did the Righteous Fire Trickster, I don't think I did a good job of this. I basically was just assembling it on the side, and then once I had it all put together, I was like, hey, look, I switched everything to Energy Shield Trickster. I want to give you guys a better, I guess, walkthrough of daily uploads when I'm progressing this character in League, what gear I'm prioritized snagging and setting aside and preparing for the Energy Shield switch. Stuff like that I want to keep you guys updated on. But initially, the Energy Shield build just requires a decent amount of niche specific gear that will become cheaper. Just a few, like basically a week in the League, it'll become cheaper as the days go on. And so I don't think I can say, hey, start out with Energy Shield. It's just not going to work. That's why we have to start out as life based. We have to work it through. We have to basically farm some currency and assemble the gear to become the god tier trickster we're trying to become. Now, there's one linchpin to the whole operation of Energy Shield Trickster. This is something I don't think should exist in Path of Exile, and that is monsters disable flask effects on hit. Personally, I think this is a stupid mod, and they were talking about bringing Arch Nemesis monsters. I really hope this is included in one of the things they're not going to add to the core game, because this effectively just is like going to kill builds that rely on their flasks. For example, Core Skating Elixir builds, which is what this character is going to be, relies on Core Skating Elixir to be up. If a monster can just turn it off and then all of a sudden cast damage bypasses our 10,000 plus energy shield to hit 10 life damage on us and insta-kill us, that's kind of stupid. It would be the same thing as if a monster in the game existed that will just be able to cull people. So low life builds all of a sudden aren't viable if you happen to run into a monster that can cull you. It's just kind of a stupid thing. It would be completely countering Olros. If you have a monster that just disables your Olros flask, guess what? A Ward Loop build is dead instantaneously. They will die to their self-damage. Once that ward drops, they are done for. I don't think this should exist in Path of Exile. I really, really hope the devs had the foresight to be like, yeah, we should not add this to the game. There are builds and there are flasks that are specifically tied to the survival of a character. We probably shouldn't give a monster the ability to just disable it. It just doesn't really... I don't think it shouldn't exist in the game. To be able, it makes sense for there to be an Elemental Reflect mod that can roll on a map. You know before you run the map, if I run this, I'm going to die to Elemental Reflect. That's okay. But if you can just randomly spawn a monster that perfectly counters your character and will just kill your character and it's just a random occurrence, that's going to lead to super frustration. That shouldn't be a thing that exists, type of thing. So that's one reason I don't think this will actually get added to the core rare pool. I think GGG will realize, yeah, this is something that shouldn't exist. We will see. If it does exist, I'll keep you guys updated on how it feels to play against, because if this thing exists, it's going to affect every build that uses Coruscated Elixir for a low life build type of thing. So we will see. That's one thing I wanted to be crystal clear on. I don't think this will be added to the core game, but there is that potential there. There is that risk. All right, so also, I should mention this. I did a brief note section about like the generic game plan of what we're going to do for the Righteous Fire Trickster, about basically the first gear slots we're going for, I guess the general gist of the gem links we're going off for. I also set up some gem link setups here. I set up some pretty basic items. I mostly just did 3 stat items plus a benchcraft on pretty much every item, and then I did some uniques here and there. This is pretty much the early super budget day 1, day 2 gear where you're going to be able to get into red maps. You're probably going to be able to run them, but you still want to upgrade from this to the point where you can start taking on Maven, Shaper, Cirrus, Elder, you know, yada, 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 stuff like that. You'll want to upgrade from this. This gear is just kind of okay, but I think it would be fairly easy to upgrade from this, and that's what I would recommend doing. As I'm saying, when I'm talking about how this character is about 5 to 10x investment, that gear for this character should be significantly better than this gear here. And I'm going to walk you guys through this when I am making the day-to-day uploads. I'm going to be talking about the gear upgrades I make, why I make them, and basically how affordable it was, how much it costs, stuff like that. I'll try to keep you guys posted. So this right now is the plan for the character, but I have decided, this is something I don't normally ever do before League start, because I hate going through the campaign. I don't really enjoy the campaign, but I myself am actually going to take the time. I'm going to make a shadow, and I am going to figure out at what point it feels good to transition into Righteous Fire. Previously, I was able to do it on the first lab, but it didn't really feel cozy until the second lab type of deal. Moral of the story is I'm going to go through and add notes to the path of building and do an updated one, trying to give you guys a better picture of the prioritization of passives as well as gear upgrades. I will try to be updating this note section to say, hey, at level 12 we got this skill, it was better to level with than this other skill. Or I'll say, hey, at this level we can now add in this extra aura because we picked up this specific mana reservation cluster over here. Stuff like that. I'll go into details trying to give you guys information. Moral story is I'm going to do my due diligence to practice a leveling run and then detail it out. So that way, if you're showing up on League Start and you have the updated version of my POB that I'm going to post another video for, and it will basically walk you through, hey, at this point, this is what I recommend doing. So that way, on League Start Day, you have a very easy to scroll through video that goes over each point where I transitioned to gear as I was doing basically an SSF League Starts basically test scenario. That's the plan, at least. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. I'm playing a Trickster. Wish me luck. For those of you who will join me in the Trickster Alliance, let's rock and roll. Okay, let's show that Trickster can be something more. The goal for this character would be to, at the end of it, to make a character that is better than the endgame Inquisitors. I personally am not confident that's possible, but I think there is a chance it is possible, and that's something I like to do. I like to take something that people say is crap, which is Trickster. People mostly agree Trickster's bad. There was a reason there was a meme with Trickster with Copium about no buffs, because everybody agrees Trickster right now is in a bad spot. Let's prove that Trickster can be good. Maybe for one scenario, if we try hard enough, if we think creatively enough, maybe we can make it work. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoy the video. Take care, Exiles.